Currently on the screen is a look at Invest 91L, and welcome to another update on the developing tropical scene via the Cayman Hurricane Center. And here is Adam to provide the information.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much there, David, and thank all of you for joining us here again on this tropical update for the developing tropical scene out there in the main development region of the Atlantic Ocean. Our main feature of interest at the present time is Invest 91L. Invest 91L is going to be a threat to the Caribbean. There is also Invest Area 92L out in the central Atlantic in the main development region. That area is likely not to cause too much impact to the Caribbean, may probably miss the Caribbean, maybe impact the northeastern Caribbean islands before continuing on towards possibly the southwest Atlantic Bahama area. There's also another area of interest that just came off of Africa that could potentially become Invest 93L. That area likely to stay out to open waters. So here on your screen, you have the tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center. And as you could see, very colorful, very plentiful on the screen. Again, our Invest 91L located here, give you the particulars on that. A low pressure system located about almost 700 miles now east of Barbados. This system has become better defined throughout the day and since last night coming up until now. The thunderstorm activity mostly on the western side, however, starting to build over the center. It has become better defined. The circulation is definitely visible on the satellite imagery, and up-level conditions are expected to get even more conducive for development as we head further and further to the west. And this system is expected to continue off towards the west, generally 15 miles per hour. And also, reconnaissance aircraft is expected to visit this area tomorrow. Should be wheels up at about 11:15 in the morning. That's Eastern Standard Time. And should make its way out into the system around midday to early afternoon. I'm very intrigued to see what they will find. The other area, the area here, Invest 92, just to give you information on that, that's about 800 miles west of the Cabo Verde or Cape Verde Islands. Its associated showers and thunderstorms do remain disorganized. Eventual gradual development of the system is possible during the next few days as it moves west-northwest, again, much like 91, moving at 15. Up-level winds are expected to become less conducive for this one as it's expected to move north of the islands. So I'll explain a little bit about that in just a minute. But also with this other area, a large tropical wave that had came off of Africa this morning again. It's producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms, and environmental conditions do appear conducive for gradual development as it moves off towards the west-northwest. So behind the 92, that's when things would become a bit more favored for the short term. Anyway, we'll see how things go when we get into the medium and long term for that system. So we'll go, and then obviously here is Hurricane Gert, definitely a strengthening hurricane, heading out into open waters, not affecting land. It is a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane, Cat 2 hurricane. It is now, so most certainly the strongest hurricane so far yet this season. But luckily, that system not going to be affecting land. So let's get right into 91L's satellite imagery here. Here's the floater loop for the invest area. And definitely compared to last night, compared to a good portion of yesterday, the thunderstorm activity was not as organized or as strong as it is now. I've always said that with this particular system, talking on the blogs and other stuff on Weather Underground and elsewhere, that it'll probably sort of get its way to about 50 west before it starts to really pick up. And here's that magic 50 west line, and as you can see, it is starting to pick up. So definitely starting to get there. That banding is starting to appear. Definitely heavy, deep convection starting to pop off. The interesting thing to take note of is that being as it is right now, the peak of diurnal minimum is passing over the system, and usually during diurnal minimum you really see a decrease in the thunderstorm activity. But this, on the other hand, is not doing that. It's blowing up, and usually that's a good sign that the system is developing. Here is the visible or RGB satellite imagery of it. This, you could get to see the circulation very well on this. The circulation is definitely developing quite nicely. It is tightly tucked. The center would be right where that blow up of thunderstorm of convection right there. You go back to the other imagery, it'd be this little spot here, just next to the larger blow up of thunderstorms. So if you could see in the imagery here, definitely starting to see those spiral bandings starting to take place in the low level cloud fields. And it's starting to pop off as those thunderstorms build up into the higher parts of the atmosphere. As you can see, the cloud tops getting more color. So this one I'm very concerned about. It's definitely making its way towards development. I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a tropical depression tonight or early tomorrow, and I wouldn't be surprised if Recon flies in tomorrow and ends up finding a tropical storm. It would not surprise me. It's moving into warmer sea surface temperatures towards the west, and again, conditions will be more favored as it does so. So overall, let's have a look at this sort of wider view here. Again, here is our Invest 91L. Here's Invest 92. Again, the thunderstorm activity not as hot as, or should I say, not as cold as the cloud tops over here. Yeah, it's starting to get itself much more organized, whilst diurnal minimum seems to be having an effect on 92L. As you can see, the convection seems to be waning a bit here on this system. But also take note, this tropical wave that's now moving through the eastern Caribbean, definitely flaring up quite a bit, and that's quite interesting here too. You could sort of see here the cloud turning up here. This is all in the upper levels. That's an upper level low. That's part of the troughing, the upper level troughing, otherwise known as TUT, T-U-T-T, that extends across the northern Atlantic, subtropics, Atlantic here. That is moving off towards the west and west-northwest, and there was a wall of shear, and there still partially is a wall of shear along here, and that wall of shear is actually moving away, and the upper level anticyclone that is over the Invest Area 91 and the partial anticyclonic ridge that extends out into the southeastern Caribbean, that there is providing fairly low wind shear for the system, and it continues to push westwards, so pushing this wall of shear out of the way and allowing for the system to take off. The only sort of limiting factor to this would be there's a bit of dry air off to its north, and there might be some sort of trying to get into the system. But obviously we see the system is fighting back and blowing up these thunderstorms, so it's not letting the dry air hold it back. The other issue for development is that there's also the Eastern Caribbean, which is also considered the storm graveyard, which is that trade winds usually tend to pick up along here, and if storms don't develop before then likely it won't really do much until it gets further west towards the central and western Caribbean. I don't think that'll be too much of an issue for this system either, because it definitely appears that this thing probably could develop before it gets to the islands, and if it definitely strengthens and ends up as a very decent tropical storm before then I don't think that'll be much of an issue for this system. So here's just the surface charts just showing you exactly what Hurricane Gert here in the extreme northwestern part of this image here moving out. This is our Invest Area 91, Invest 92, and possibly soon to be Invest 93. Very large, expansive, high-pressure ridge, and even extends out towards the Gulf of Mexico. Should generally drive things more towards the west, west, northwest for all three of these systems. In terms of Invest 91, 92, and looking at sort of their X-rays, if you want to call it that, we look at the 850, the low-level vorticity for these systems. Here you could also see Hurricane Gert, very strong vorticity, very well developed, and that should continue to move out, eventually weaken as it gets merged into a non-tropical frontal system, and eventually move its way out towards the United Kingdom. Here is our Invest Area 91 and 92. Invest Area 91 definitely growing in size and definitely getting itself there organized. 92 also getting itself organized, still a bit broad, still a bit sort of oval shape, but eventually getting there. Also noting that the tropical wave that is moving through the Eastern Caribbean, the vorticity on that has been picking up too, oddly enough. There's no expectation about this tropical wave to have any sort of development. However, it is expected to move sort of west to west northwest, bringing some showers and so on for the Caribbean going forward. But again, the Eastern Caribbean needs to start paying attention to Invest 91L. And here's the forecast guidance for Invest 91L. And again, I just want to point out that the models have been shifting sort of north and west and south and west with each run, and kind of jumping back and forth. And so we'll have to watch this closely, but I'm definitely quite sure that it's starting to narrow down. And eventually, I think by the time we get in towards the Eastern Caribbean islands, that the track will become a little bit more steady, and we'll know a more exact track. But again, things change all the time. Many things can change. Anyway, this is the latest forecast models, and so as you can see, general west to west northwest track, and so it's going to be interesting. It really is. Obviously, first impacts would probably be Barbados, and then from Barbados we could be looking at Saint Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, probably all the way up to Guadeloupe and Antigua. That would probably be getting the effects of this system as it moves on west, west, northwest. And then eventually, maybe depending on exactly where this thing goes, probably impacts towards Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, or if it does move a bit further south, it'd be more northern Honduras, probably Belize and the Yucatan. Now, here's this. I was looking at the intensity guidance, and they more or less have two camps. A weak camp, which takes this thing either non-developed or TD or a weak tropical storm and put it through the Caribbean, or a strengthening tropical storm and possibly getting up to hurricane. Now, looking at that and then looking at the models, I'll say this. Usually storms would tend to want to lift further north the stronger it is, and the weaker it is, the further south it would want to track. So, with that being said, if this system does take off, become a tropical storm or so before the Caribbean or before the Eastern Caribbean, or develop as a tropical storm by the time it gets there and continues to strengthen, then we could be looking at a more northerly track. If the system does not develop much or remains a TD, tropical depression or so, then maybe a more southerly track would prevail. Now, I could see either option happening, but I'm leaning more towards the stronger system. Again, as per mentioned, the wall of shear that's here in the Eastern Caribbean, that's lifting out. So again, the National Hurricane Center, as mentioned recently, before they'd mentioned that conditions may become slightly less favorable, but now they're no longer saying that. Now they're saying conditions would become even more conducive for development as this moves out. So that's one plus. Looking at the ship's intensity model, going through the details on that, it is showing that shear is expected to remain low for this system. So shear does not seem to be an issue. In terms of sea surface temperatures and ocean heat content, that's not going to be an issue. Sea surface temperatures are, as it moves further and further west, will constantly get warmer and warmer for this system. And the other thing that I'm quite concerned about is the ocean heat content, which I'm going to bring up right now. Right, so this is the ocean heat content for the Caribbean, and it's quite high. Even all of this stuff here could definitely support yourself a decent tropical storm. Even this stuff could support yourself a decent hurricane. With this stuff, definitely high enough to even support a major hurricane at that. And as you remember seeing with the models and its expected track, it's more or less expected to go along the route that will take it through some of this warm, high ocean heat content. And that's another thing that's concerning, because if it does, obviously you'd end up getting a stronger system and it'd end up pulling further north. The only sort of limiting factor would be, again, dry air. But if it's able to build out and with that convection and give itself that protective moisture barrier, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. However, if it tracks too far to the south here, we do know that at times, if it tracks too far south, and remember with the circulation in anti-clockwise motion, it would sort of drag that sort of dry air that comes off of the continent of South America, and that may get entangled into the system. But if it stays further to the north, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. So again, there are factors that play in how the system will develop and how the system will move. Generally, west to west-north track will prevail. It's not like it's going to end up throwing itself north and towards Hispaniola, Cuba, and then rolling itself into Florida. We don't see that occurring. And we don't see the thing just rapidly turning south and hitting Trinidad and going into South America. So again, generally west to west-northwest track, and so areas such as Jamaica, Honduras, the Cayman Islands, Belize, Yucatan, that whole area should keep a close eye on it, as well as the Eastern Caribbean as we go forward in time. So again, tomorrow we'll have a recon mission flying in. Actually, we're going to start the constant roll of recon missions into the system as we go forward in time, and we'll get better data from the hurricane hunters to put into the forecast models, so we could end up getting better forecast models. But overall, this is something that definitely a threat for the Caribbean, for the Eastern Caribbean first, and then off towards the Western Caribbean, Northwest Caribbean, and of course Central America. We'll see in due time. To give you the timelines on things, we're looking at it to start impacting the Eastern Caribbean, the islands of Barbados, and maybe Martinique, St. Lucia, and Dominica. Maybe very late on Thursday going into Friday. Maybe we're looking at a possible tropical storm passing through those islands either late Friday or early Saturday. Probably Friday going to Saturday, likely being in the Eastern Caribbean by Saturday, going east by mid-Saturday, and then probably heading off towards, say, southeast of Jamaica by Sunday or Monday, and then going forward. So not very much time for you guys in the Eastern Caribbean. I would suggest for you guys to start preparing now for this system, and watch it very closely, because this thing can ramp up fairly quick if it meets the sweet spot in conditions, and it could mean trouble in a short period of time. So that is going to be it for this update, and we'll be back a little later on to update you more as more data comes out. And again, tomorrow we'll have hopefully a lot more updates, especially as the recon aircraft heads out and flies into the system. So that's it from me, Adam McDoom for Cayman Hurricane Center, and I'll catch you a little later on.